welcome to the DC Stewart Show. My name is Derek Stewart, and sometimes I go by DC. Most of the time, I go by Derek. I just wanted to welcome everybody today. I'm going to do a short show today. I watched a few games last night. I watched a little bit of the Detroit Lions against the Seattle Seahawks, and I also watched the Miami Dolphins just stink up the place against man, I'm so frustrated with the Dolphins now because they have went from almost being a playoff bound team to basically in the basement of the AFC East. Very troubling. I don't blame everything on any one particular thing other than the fact that Tua, who's the starting quarterback, he got injured again, and that kind of threw the season into a tailspin in a way because Tua he has a good feel for the offense in terms of the pulse of the offense with him and the coach Mike McDaniel communicating the plays that they're going to run, and a lot of it was timing. Last night I saw a lot of issues with their timing on offense with their receivers. um Tyler Huntley is a good quarterback. I'm not going to knock him because he kind of came in at the last minute. They brought him in to be the quarterback to fill in for Tua. Hundley's a local boy. He's from Hollandale, Florida. It's kind of a really good story for him to be able to come back to Miami after he left Miami, and he played in the NFL for the Baltimore Ravens for quite some time behind Lamar Jackson. So I'm not knocking him as far as being someone who was the central culprit for the game last night. I just blame it. A lot of it has to do with the coaching. I hate to say that because Mike McDaniel, to me, I thought the Dolphins really hit a home run when they brought him in. Mike McDaniel's really a smart guy. He's a Yale graduate. He played football at Yale. But I'm wondering to begin to wonder whether those players have responded to him. He's a fairly young guy. He looks extremely young. And a lot of times, when you get into professional sports or any professional environment, um, a lot of times the players tend to take for granted or, just try to see how far they can go with their responses to the head coach as opposed to, let's just say, an older coach or someone who's been in the organization for X amount of years, let's say 10, 15 years. If the coach been there that long, he's going to get an immediate response out of the players in terms of their performance. That's another, a whole nother show to get into Mike McDaniel. Nothing worked last night. They couldn't run the ball. They threw sparingly where they completed a few passes, but when it came to the two bookends, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, the timing was just off. And Tennessee played him hard anyway. I saw Tennessee play him last year, and it's just something about Tennessee that they tend to want to beat up on the Dolphins when they play the Dolphins, whether it's in Miami or whether it's in Tennessee, in Nashville. That's where the Tennessee Titans play. They were 0-3 coming into this game, and they didn't look 0-3. Miami was the one that looked 0-3 to me. Defense played so subpar. They were able to make some stops, but it just the offense couldn't get anything going. And to have a final score of 31 points scored on a team that last year was just knocking the ball out of the park in terms of their ability to be able to strike score just like that with Tua, hitting Hill or hitting Waddle, or any of the backs out of the backfield. It's stunning to me. So they're going to have to make some serious changes. McDaniel did comment, and he made some hints according to the article that I read earlier. He hints at offensive changes after loss to Titans. Everything is on the table, and you better believe everything is on the table because the team's season is hanging in the balance to make the playoffs this year. If they keep that up, they're not going to make the playoffs. They're going to be right down at the bottom with several other teams with the New York Jets because they're not much better in my opinion. Falling 31-12 is unacceptable for the Miami Dolphins. And Chris Greer, I don't know the man, but he put all of his eggs in one basket with Tua. I mean, he didn't seem to be concerned about bringing a backup quarterback in, although Tua has been injured over the past 2 years with concussions. Concussions is a serious matter, and that's something that Tua and his family is going to have to figure out what they want to do about his long-term health. Because short-term health is one thing, but when you're talking about long-term health, you're talking about a whole different scenario. I mean, Tua's a young guy. I mean, he could easily, if he don't make the right decision with this and he goes back in and he keeps sustaining, blows to his head, he could potentially be affected the rest of his life. So that's a very, very serious concern that I have just for him alone, much less than the team. But they have to get another quarterback in there, and that's Chris Greer's job. Stephen Ross he trusts Chris Greer. Whatever Chris Greer kind of pitched to him, he take it. Okay, well, we'll do this. And I think a lot of it falls right in the lap, of Chris Greer, because let's just say if Chris Greer would have brought a really decent backup quarterback in there, we might not even be looking at this 31-12 defeat last night. So that's something that they're going to have to really, really focus on in the next coming weeks. Because I love the Dolphins. I grew up a Dolphins fan. I remember when they played in the Orange Bowl, Don Shula era, all of the greats to come out of Miami, Dan Marino, Mercury Morris, I mean, basically a lot of really, really good players. Bob Greasy, and I can go on and on and on. But I'm going to move on to the next subject because I'll tackle the Dolphins a little bit later in terms of their ability to be able to make that turnaround this year. And I want to send a special shout out to a guy I met in the Facebook community by the name of Dwayne Torres. Dwayne Torres, to me, is a very, very unique, very special individual. I happen to be lucky enough to meet him on Facebook because he is an avid Hurricanes fan, which I am an avid Hurricanes fan of the Miami Hurricanes, which is the college football team that's in Miami. And they're the most talked about team in the town right now because they are 5-0. So long story short with Dwayne, he added a lot of historical material to the Canes communities, the Canes, Facebook groups, and interacting with Canes fans and things of that sort. And really, 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 he's a special individual. And I wanted to take the time right now to show how special he is, where he made a reel a couple of days ago. And it was so moving to me because when I think things are bad, things are worse for a lot of other people. And I want you to understand as a viewer and as a person that have your health and have everything working for you. Everything might not work for you financially. Some things might not work for you in a job environment. But if you have your health, you have a lot to work with, because if you don't have your health, you do not have a lot to work with. So I'm going to read this reel from Dwayne, this short reel. Dwayne's a local Miami boy, just like I grew up in Miami, and I think his story is moving. So I'm going to share this with you right now. Dwayne said, "For many years before my accident, I had no purpose. All I wanted to do was drink, do drugs, and come home the next day broke. I kept asking God and myself to stop because it was leading me to nowhere and probably sick or dead. My wake-up call came when I was electrocuted on April 8th, 2010, which left me in the hospital for 1 year and 4 months. Since then, I have not stopped coming back to this hospital because of the relationship I have built with the nurses, doctors, physical and occupational therapists, and even the woman who used to clean my room. As the years went by after my accident, I have gotten stronger to the point that I drive myself to the hospital at least 2 to 3 times a month to speak and help motivate any burn survivor in person so that they can see my burns, missing eye, and scars, and that there is hope to continue living. And thank you at Seven Mealwins for doing the burn group survivor meetings for us to open up and share our stories in person or through Zoom. Thank God for saving my life and giving me a purpose. Thank God again, Dwayne, for saving your life, because you are the person that God is using to inspire other people in this world, not just the Miami and not just the state of Florida, but this whole world and this whole country. People like you is really what make the difference and what makes an American be an American, Dwayne. So you are really, really, truly embedded in my heart as a person, because I could have easily not met you and I wouldn't have had this special feeling that I have when I feel down on myself, and when things are not going the way I expect them to go. It's really, 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 really moving to me. Also, I would like to also thank the medical providers at Jackson Memorial Hospital. Jackson Memorial Hospital is one of the largest hospitals, if not in the state of Florida, but in the city of Miami. Jackson has a Ryder trauma center, which they treat burn victims, they treat gunshot victims, they treat car accident victims, and they have some of the best medical people in on the planet, in my opinion, other than what's going on in the rest of the country with a lot of other hospitals. Those medical people at Jackson Memorial Hospital, they provide a special care for people who are injured or involved in catastrophic injuries or catastrophic accidents. They help people live, they help people recover, and they help people move on with their life for what they can do beyond, you know, after the injury, what is possible. So again, Dwayne, thank you. It's going to be more and more and more interaction that I have with you. I'm going to be doing this podcast, and hopefully one day I can meet you in Miami, because I'm coming back to Florida to see the Hurricanes play. It might not be this year because I haven't moved around quite a bit since 2020, but it's more than likely going to be next year because Isaiah lives down there, and Isaiah is a colleague of mine, and he does this podcast with me. So Isaiah and myself would like to meet you, Dwayne. We look forward to that. So moving on, another article I noticed: the Florida State Seminoles are not doing extremely well this year. The Florida State Seminoles are doing extremely bad this year. They're terrible. And you know what? I don't really feel any sympathy for Florida State because I've never been a Florida State fan. I'm not from the northern panhandle of the state of Florida. I've watched them over my lifetime when they had the great Bobby Bowden, who was the head coach of Florida State. But you know what? They were 13-0 last year. And all of a sudden, they've only won one game so far. And they skated by that game against Cal. I mean, Cal just joined the ACC. Cal was in the Pac-12, and University of California, Berkeley, they, along with Stanford, repositioned themselves in the ACC, which is really an Atlantic Coast conference. For a West Coast team all the way on the other end of the country to be playing in the Atlantic Coast Conference, that's something in itself. But what I wanted to talk about was the coach. Mike Norvell is a really good coach. So I'm not going to be convinced that all of a sudden within 1 year he goes from 13-0 down to 1-4 without kind of adding a little bit of putting a little bit of content behind that. So my content of what I saw last year is Mike Nolan. He has a resume, and he has a good resume. Coached at Memphis State, then he moved to Florida State. He struggled the first 3 years in his coaching at Florida State, and he got them on track last year. And a lot of that was due to the fact that the team was just inspired and playing above the key, I mean, with quarterback Jordan Travis, DJ Uiagalelei, and I'm hoping I pronounce DJ's name properly. DJ is a local kid from Los Angeles in Bellflower from St. John Bosco. He was a 5-star recruit at St. John. St. John is more like a college program, along with Mater Dei, which is in Orange County. They're ranked 1 and 2 in high school football rankings right now around the country. So that tells you a lot. DJ Uiagalelei is a really good football player, and he's got the size. He's 6'4", 250 pounds. So think about that. Just marinate that a little bit. DJ Uiagalelei is 6'4", 250 pounds. That is a big quarterback. And he has the arm and the ability to be able to scramble and run and get out of the way at a rush when needed, because that, in this day and age, is what most quarterbacks need to avoid edge rushing at the speed that those edge rushers come with. So my thing is, he made a comment about Mike Norvell at Florida State that I thought was a little bit unfair. And I would say it's unfair that he would somewhat criticize Mike Norvell, because Mike Norvell took the chance on him by bringing him into Florida State. You know, in the first 4 games of the year, if you look at DJ's stats, they basically were just average stats. I mean, according to what I'm looking at here, let me open up a little bit more history into DJ coming out of St. John Bosco before I start into the stats. DJ committed to Clemson University to play for Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney is a good coach too. Dabo Swinney, he's legendary in Clemson territory, and he won a national championship, put out some really good players to Clemson, and DJ took over for him after the quarterback who was the starting quarterback at the time, who plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars now, and Trevor Lawrence is the starting quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and DJ Uiagalelei played behind him at Clemson, so he was injured. And I do remember the game he was injured, and he couldn't play in the Notre Dame game. And I thought DJ did a really good job with rallying that team around him while, Lawrence was hurt, bringing that team together. And I thought he had a really bright future at Clemson. That, along with, Clemson being the legacy program that it is, I was thinking that he was going to have a really storied career at Clemson, but that didn't quite pan out for him to go to Clemson University and finish at Clemson University. But the reason I'm bringing all of this up is because he tended to do the same thing with Dabo Swinney. So his quote is what I'm going to read to you now. It says, "I didn't want to do what I was doing at Clemson. I didn't really like what we did there scheme-wise. I didn't think we did very much. I thought it was very basic. It didn't help me out as a quarterback and play to my strength. I wanted to go somewhere where I could play to my strength and go somewhere that could develop me for the NFL. Play action, work under the center, throw the ball deep." Well, Clemson was playing that type of offense. You have Deshaun Watson, and he's not doing that well right now, so don't let me use him as a prime example. But Deshaun Watson won a national championship with Clemson, and he basically, went to the NFL and played at Houston for quite some time. He played at the Texans, and he was not, he was all world at Houston, all NFL. And then he decided that, he ran into some off the field problems, and then he ended up in Cleveland, and he's not performing to his expectations or the team's expectations in Cleveland right now. But that said, for DJ to go from Clemson to Oregon State, where he did pretty decent at Oregon State, he maybe should have stayed at Oregon State. But I think what he was doing is he chased NIL money Florida State because Florida State is a much bigger program than Oregon State, and that's just my solid opinion on that. He might have should have stayed at Oregon State because if you're going to throw your coach under the bus, I mean, I don't think this is the appropriate time to do it. And some of it was driven from the fact that he was benched against SMU University. Right now, I mean, at Clemson, he completed 515 of 861 passes for 59.8% QBR for 5,681 yards with 36 touchdowns and 17 interceptions in 1,913 snaps over 36 games, 28 starts for the Tigers. To me, where I find it, to be concerning about him talking about coaches, 17 interceptions out of 36 touchdowns, that's half of what the touchdowns you threw interception. Not only that, when you were given these opportunities by these coaches to turn a team around, other than Oregon State, because, Coach Jonathan Smith, he worked with you and you look very, very good at, Oregon State. But at Florida State right now, how could the team go from 13-0 with Jordan Travis starting the majority of the year until he got injured and couldn't play in the college playoff series? Jordan Travis, to me, is a good quarterback, but he doesn't have the size and the skill set and the talent that DJ had. I think DJ has to accept some responsibility and some accountability to why this team is in the position that it is in now. You can't blame Mike Norvell. You have to accept responsibility. And you have to accept that, look, a lot of it's on me, because at the end of the day, the coach can only teach you what he's going to teach you along with the coaching staff, and then you have to actually parlay that onto the field. So that's something that I'm thinking that he's headed into the transfer portal, but he's a fifth-year senior. So I don't know how that works with the way the college structure is set up right now. I know Cam Rising over at Utah, he's been there. To me, I've counted 6 years plus. And I'll follow that up with some facts behind that. But maybe he might try to, do an extra year if he can do that in college football. He might petition to do an extra year and maybe try to go someplace where, he could be an immediate impact. On Jonathan Smith, who coached Oregon State, he's currently at Michigan State. So that might be a place that DJ might be looking at if they don't have a quarterback that's already established at Michigan State. But I just found it troubling to see, this type of, I would say, negative reaction to Coach Norvell benching you because he's trying to find a spark to spark the team to get the offense, to start making some moves and making plays, because really all it boils down to at the end of the day, you could run 110 plays, but you got to make the play. You got to make the plays. When you run them plays, you got to execute those plays to the fullest. So good luck to DJ. I have no issue with DJ. DJ's a local guy from Los Angeles. I live in Los Angeles, so hopefully he'll move on and, become a successful NFL quarterback, which I think he will, because he definitely has the size and the skill set to do it. It's just unfortunate that they're in a situation at Florida State now where when things are not going well, people point the fingers at each other. It happens in real world life every day, whether it's in a regular work environment or a sports team or, just sports in general. So I would just say Florida State is basically headed for a massive disaster this year. I know they play Miami, and Miami owed Florida State for a couple of years of coming into Miami and then up in Florida State. This year should be retribution. I don't see Florida State winning it with Miami this year, unless something catastrophic happens with Miami, which I don't think will happen. But at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting to see if Mike Norvell survives this year, going from 13-0 down to 1-4. unless he can turn this season around right now, because with these boosters and with these schools, it's what have you done for me lately? Not only lately, but what have you done for me the very next Saturday in the whole season? Because a lot of schools like Florida State, their season rides on getting to that playoff system that they have created and getting into that CFB playoff and getting all the way to the final game and winning it, outright. So it's going to be interesting to see if he does not survive it. He'll find a coaching job somewhere else, because I know a lot of other schools will take some chances on him. My thing is, with football, basketball, any type of team sport, everybody has to be on the same page. It doesn't matter whether it's high school, whether it's college, whether it's uh, NFL or NBA, or any of it. Everybody has to be on the same page, and all the cylinders have to click. So I'm going to wrap this show up right now and come back. And we'll talk about some other things. I'm going to be heavily involved in this Facebook community called the Miami Facebook community, the U, which is my ultimate community, because I want to be deeply involved in that community and able to, contribute and listen to what people have to say about the Hurricanes this year and the Hurricanes' future. So we'll be back to talk again soon. My name is Derek Stewart again. I'd like to ask you to hit that like button. I'm just getting started out along with Isaiah. We've done a few shows already, but we're starting to kick them out. We're going to be talking a little bit about everything. We specialize in high school football. I'll come back with some high school football information to cover this week. About the rankings. What I do know is Mater Dei, which is based in Orange County, Santa Ana, California. They are currently sitting atop number 1, and St. John Bosco out of Bellflower is sitting at number 2, and those two teams have to meet each other in Santa Ana on October 25th, if I'm not mistaken. That's going to be a hell of a game. I'm going to try to figure out a way to get there to see that game, because that's the Titans, the clash of the Titans, number 1 and number 2 in high school. Both teams, a majority, if not half of their teams, are going to Division I schools and have already received offers, and some of them have made commitments. So with that said, hit that like button for me and subscribe to my page. You can check out my website. My website is still currently under an overall haul. And we're going to be adding some really good content to the website and talking a little bit about that as well. And we'll keep you posted on that. And I'm going to open up this podcast to the University of Miami Facebook community that I just joined. And we'll have people from there talking. I want to talk to some of the Miami players back from the glory years. And guys like Jay Brophy. Jay Brophy is one of my favorites. Glenn Dennison, who was a tight end, and most people might not remember him. He was on that national championship team. I want to hear from him. So I have quite a few guys I want to hear from. Alonzo Highsmith, Melvin Bratton. I can keep going on and on. Daniel Stubbs. Greg Mark was another one. He stuck out to me. Greg Mark was a edge rusher. They call them edge rushers now, but they were defensive ends back then, in a 3-point stance. And Greg Mark was the real deal. So anyway, Derek Stewart in again, and we'll talk again soon. Take care. Out.
You've reached the end of another episode of the DC Stewart Sports Talk podcast. Be sure to connect with us at Facebook and Twitter.com. Your voice is important, so head over to iTunes.